Hello, and welcome to today's movie review. Today we are talking about Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith in our Star Wars series, essentially our fourth film. I will warn you, we're going to go full spoilers, and this one will probably be deeper than the previous films as we are ending the Anakin Skywalker trilogy or the Rise of Darth Vader, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But the quick schematics of the film, released May 19th, 2005. It actually has one of the higher prequel ratings on Rotten Tomatoes with 80% with 294 reviews. Overall, I actually enjoyed this film more than I thought I would. From it, it's the better of the three prequel trilogies films, at least in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, yeah. If I skip the scenes with Anakin and Padme, yes.
They're better than
They're
Attack
better
of the
than
Clones.
two. I know. In a lot of ways, yeah. Overall, it's the best of those three. I mean, I still hold a special place in my heart for Episode 1, but that's because you can connect more to it versus the whole digital reel, you know. But otherwise, I mean, graphically, for CGI, awesome. Opening scene, I mean, that like was one of those moments in Star Wars of seeing them in theaters, just going, "Holy crap!" But I mean, you're concluding a storyline, and I mean, it wrapped it up fairly nicely. So,
Well, they marketed this one as the saga concludes, or the conclusion of the saga, or something like that. Which makes me laugh thinking of the fact that we got how how the saga has continued recently.
mm-hmm.
But you mentioned the opening scene. I haven't mentioned this before, but the opening crawl, this one was kind of weird. It's like war, and then it goes on to stuff that just makes you go,
It
huh?
almost had like a Clone Wars like show, like war.
Yeah. But you mentioned that opening sequence, and you don't think much of it when it pans down and you just get this. I believe it was a Venator class, this one.
Yeah.
But you just get Anakin and uh, Obi-Wan in their Jedi starfighter. Were these starfighters or
The Interceptors.
the Interceptor? And then they roll over, and you just see this massive space battle, which they couldn't do. I don't think they could have done a battle of that scale, the dense pack
No.
with models.
Oh, no. But I'm not complaining on that one because the graphics were, I mean, excellent. The only thing I had with the space battle was it was literally half of it was them trying to get buzz droids off the starfighter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was one of the best space battles out there. I mean, I still prefer Battle of Endor from 6, but that's just me.
That could
That's
just be nostalgia too.
It is.
But even if we take out the buzz droids and the over, I don't want to say overacting, the overcomplicated move that Anakin uses to destroy the rockets with the buzz droids going after him, you have to give it to him there. He really showed off how well of a pilot, how good of a pilot he is. And Obi-Wan again, flying's for droids.
Except if a droid had been flying, he'd be dead.
Yeah, well, because if droids could think.
Exactly.
Um, which leads us into our introduction of General Grievous.
Kind of got a
Where?
Supreme Leader Snoke kind of thing going.
Because he
We're
just,
instead of using Dooku as the villain and having him like actually get some screen time, we're gonna throw in a completely new villain that you guys know nothing about, and who literally the dialogue in the opening scene has zero like precedent to it. Like, you're literally listening to a conversation and you have no understanding of what they're
And
discussing.
he mentions he's mentioned in the crawl,
Mhm.
and we don't really know anything. I don't even remember what what his species originally was, or
No.
he's essentially a warlord that wanted more power, and Dooku gave him the opportunity after killing him and putting his brain in a droid. Long story short.
Yeah. Except, once again, you have no idea what any of that is unless you read into the expanded universe.
Yep.
So it's kind of a theme, I think, for Star Wars in that after the original trilogy, we're just going to throw some villains in randomly that are, like arch nemesises, and yet they have zero backstory in the films and are only there long enough to cause some trouble and then die.
Right, because Grievous specifically mentions Obi-Wan as the negotiator, and after I know we watched it, this movie released before the Clone Wars TV show and movie, but seeing that negotiation tactic that he used
In the Clone
wherever
Wars,
that was
Christophsis.
yeah, I'm thinking timeline, wherever that was in the timeline of the Clone Wars, because that conflict's 3 years. This is 3 years after Attack of the Clones, and it makes no sense. Anakin's got a scar above his eye that we have no idea. Nobody talks about it, and you just kind of go,
there.
"Why? Why?" Like, I get the hairstyle change, but why do you give him a scar if you're not going to mention it? I
Well, I mean, heck, you want to give him a scar, you could have got it in the opening scene.
You could at
The
least,
opening battle sequence, he could have got a scar.
even in the crawl, you could have make mention that they're battle worn and beaten or something like that. And
They've spent 3 years fighting a dirty, dirty war.
and then you get this idea that he's got a scar. And thinking about it, it's been a long time since I've seen the animated series, and I don't know if they go into detail on how he gets his scar. Now, that's canonical. I remember there was an old hand drawn, at least I think it was hand drawn, cartoon called The Clone Wars, or a Clone War. I don't.
It was like the first season, but then it wasn't the first season kind of deal.
Yeah, I don't
It
know.
actually covered, like,
I think it was a lightsaber fight with Ventress
probably.
on Yavin.
I don't remember. All I remember is that original one ended with the capture of the Chancellor, if I remember right.
It did, and it showed Mace Windu crushing the abdomen of Grievous, which would lead into why he's coughing
and hacking up a lung. And
yeah.
Yeah.
But we're still in this opening scene, and we get past Grievous. We got another battle with Count Dooku, with Obi-Wan and Anakin. But this time we have Palpatine tied to a chair. We didn't talk about their first battle in Attack of the Clones.
Between Dooku, yeah.
Dooku and Anakin.
It was lackluster.
To me, I see it, and this might come out poorly, but it just looked like something that would induce seizures, because it's all flashy lights, and it just looks like it came from a time where people were unaware that flashing lights caused seizures. It's what it feels like, and it's just like blah.
I mean, it's like they mentioned early on in the second film that Anakin rivals Yoda in regards to the lightsaber technique, and yet his fight with Count Dooku lasted 30 seconds, was a lot of sword waving, and he got his arm cut off. There was nothing
Well,
to
in
it.
Anakin's
Obi-Wan
mind.
got himself, knocked out of the fight early. Then Anakin gets his arm cut off, and then Yoda comes in. It's a quick little lightsaber battle that ends with Dooku dropping a tower on somebody.
Because Dooku couldn't win, and he knew it, and
But the point is that whole sequence there. I mean, we had this epic sequence in Episode 1. Probably one of the greatest lightsaber battles you see at that point.
Oh, with Darth Maul and
then you traverse to the second film where you get this brief lackluster thing against a Jedi who's supposedly this master duelist, but literally just dances around a little bit, swings his saber, cuts a guy's arm off, and then runs away. And then you get to episode 3, and you get this actually. It's short, but it's still a pretty good lightsaber duel.
It's character driven, and that's what we'll talk about it more in the original trilogy. But that's the crux of a good lightsaber duel is building character within the battle. You see that with Vader and Luke in episodes 5 and 6. You see that with Obi-Wan and Vader in 4. And this is the one where it's really flashy. Now, character driven. There's more saber battles that we'll talk about later, but this one was the character-driven piece. It wasn't flashy, and the battles that came in 2 and 1, they were more flash than substance. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't character development in Episode 1's duel, because once Qui-Gon died, Obi-Wan had major character development.
Mm-hmm. My thing with this one is you see a difference. You see, you get to see the two sides of Anakin. You get to see I'm holding back because, I'm trying to be a good Jedi, and then it comes to Dooku telling him, "I feel your anger," and blah blah blah, and next thing you know, Anakin literally just lets it out, and you just see him completely turn the whole battle around on Dooku.
Yep.
I mean, that's him when it comes to anger. And then at the end, he's trying to rein it back in.
And
I don't want to kill him. It's not the Jedi way. And then it's basically you get the impulse from Palpatine of kill him.
Yep.
And
do it.
It's just, okay, boom.
Yep.
And he's done.
Yep. And then there's a good... I'm going to bring up the novelization a few times, even though it's no longer considered canon. They lead. My memory on this is that Palpatine, who we as an audience already know is Darth Sidious. He's the mastermind of everything, and Tyrannus, Count Dooku, have this conversation, and the plan is or at least according to Dooku, the plan is to make sure Obi-Wan dies and to try to turn Anakin to their first dark side warrior. Palpatine you can see he wants Obi-Wan dead in the film.
It's because he's the positive influence.
He is the angel on his shoulder, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants Dooku gone because Dooku can basically spill it. If he's that as Anakin put, that unarmed prisoner, he's going to tell him everything.
He did it.
Palpatine's Sidious. Yeah.
I just personally have to say, though, if Anakin hadn't done it, I have a feeling Palpatine would have unveiled himself right then and there, and nobody would have gotten off that ship, though.
It's that, or somebody would have slipped him poison while he was in a holding cell.
Well, no, I mean, if he spilled it right there on the flight deck, okay, you're my prisoner. And he just basically spills the beans at that point because he's got his hands missing. His master just told Anakin to kill him. He's your Sith Lord right there.
And he had the opportunity to say it right after, kill him. Do it now.
I think he may have realized there was not much point.
I know in the novel he was hurt. He was he betrayed me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the Sith. And long story short, that's the Sith. Mm-hmm. One to embody the power and the other to crave it.
And if you're not willing, like non-Kanan, like the backstory for Maul and the old Kanan, was that simply he viewed Palpatine too much like a dad, pretty much.
Yep.
And would refuse to kill him.
He had
Palpatine gave him patience.
If I remember right, Palpatine gave him a few opportunities to kill him, and he refused.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings us. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about the politics because this leads right into Anakin being shockingly humble about his heroics, and into
he's grown up over war. A little bit.
A little bit. And this, actually, if you look at it, this is probably the best prequel in terms of politics. We got the little shadowy politics in 2, and the blatant, we're going to beat you over the head with it in 1. This one was kind of I don't want to say a mix, but there's sequences where they talk bills and treaties and trying to bring an end to the war in a peaceful situation
Well, a
with.
lot of that was cut, though.
Well, I'm not talking about the
Well, you've got Padme who's
I'm
pushing
talking.
for peace with Anakin.
Yeah, that's the scene I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. You know, she's pushing it's talk to the Chancellor, get him to open up diplomatic relations. The problem is for Anakin at this point, it's I'm not going to use my friendship with the Chancellor for political means. And secondly, at this point, I feel like he's just so angry at the Separatists, he doesn't want peace. He wants them gone.
Yep, and he kind of makes that clear subtly with his line of "You're sounding like a separatist."
Yep. Well, I mean, episode 2, he makes a point of saying, for him, peace comes at the cost of an iron fist.
Yep, because he makes that comment about people should be made to if they don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have what's known in universe as Empire Day, the speech of the formation of the New Order, where where he goes full Nazi. He's twisting the truth to suit his purpose.
Yep.
And raising himself to power that he was granted and he will never give up.
No. And then the famous line of, so that's how diplomacy dies, with thunderous applause.
Yep.
But I mean, the reality is at that point, and we discussed it while we were watching the movie, he's got a right-hand man that has literally been working with him since before he was a chancellor, and undermined the previous chancellor.
Yep.
And then sitting on his left is a woman who basically has helped him manipulate anyone and everyone that comes into his office.
I didn't realize it until this viewing from 1 through now, is that Masamida, not a Targaryen, wrong.
Togruta.
Yeah, Togruta. He long horns, but he was with the previous chancellor. He was with Palpatine. He's with Palpatine through Palpatine's death. Spoiler, eventually. And he eventually becomes
Grand Vizier.
That's his title, but I'm thinking de facto emperor. And then the
Regent.
And then you got Sly Moore, the pasty lady. I can't think of what her species was.
I don't know if they even give it.
I read it when we were watching the movie. But she apparently is force sensitive and can control the minds of others.
But
well,
the thing,
of course he's going to keep power.
Well, there's
with that
but I mean, he controls the courts. He controls the Senate. He's spent pretty much his entire adult life, you know, before he was even a senator, building as many ties, finding as much blackmail, as much pressure, anything he can use to turn them all basically into just lapdogs.
And he really shows it. This whole film is the true culmination of Palpatine's machinations. Yeah, it's everything. And he knows that he can't be beat, and he shows it. Mm-hmm. He shows off in grand style to these Jedi. He has Sith artifacts in his office when Yoda walks by.
Yeah, but they were so blinded.
There's the 2 Dwardy statues. There's the Sith murals.
Yeah, but they were just completely blinded.
Yep.
I mean, but I do want to bring up the cutout scenes though for the politics.
We got Treaty the signature, of 2000,
you know, pushing for peace.
Yep.
And led by none other than Mon Mothma.
Mothma and Amidala.
I mean, that was the first time, and you know, I wish they hadn't cut that, because that's a key piece of.
It's a key piece of Padme's story. It gives her more.
It gives it also
background to that conversation with Anakin.
Yeah, because that took place after.
Yep.
But it also is a key link
total that they cut. That
I think there was
treaty.
3. There was one primary one where it was Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Padme, and several other senators all sitting around talking about trying to push
for peace. Yep.
For peace, and they even asked her to talk to Anakin. You know, he's a hero of the Republic. He's your friend. Can you get him to talk to the Chancellor?
that relationship is like the Coruscant open secret, like Game of Thrones, Renly Baratheon being gay. Everybody knows, but nobody talks about it.
To some extent, I think she kept the pregnancy like link. If I remember right from the novel, yes, non-canon, correct.
Yep.
From the novel, they spun a story that it was somebody else, but the main thing was, I mean, heck, Obi-Wan I think suspected, but wasn't confirmed until near the end of the movie before the final confrontation.
Where he says it to her and she just lets
Is
it
it
out.
yours? And you know, but the thing is it's more along the lines of Anakin was well known, and that conversation took place before people knew she was pregnant. She was hiding it.
She wasn't hiding it well. You could see it.
Well, she was trying to keep it quiet long enough to stay in the Senate, and then she was going to
I
get
think
pulled. But the movie takes place over probably a 6-month period.
At
Because she
least.
goes from being not quite so pregnant to she's pretty much full term.
Yeah. She made it sound when she tells Anakin that she just found out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think she ended up delivering early from the shock and everything. But we'll get to that when we talk about the final half of the film. Before things really pick up, and I want to talk about Order 66, because that's really where the film kind of has its center crux, where the war is over, essentially because Grievous is dead, and then Palpatine just kind of goes, "It's time. We're gonna finish this," because he reveals himself to Anakin, and Anakin is confused.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't know where his loyalties at this point lie. On top of that, Palpatine's pretty much promised him the gift he needs because the Force is telling him that his wife's gonna die.
Yep, and there's a sequence in that part in the novelization's a little different. They're having their conversation, and Palpatine has this line that says, "I'll give you anything you want. You want that building over there, you can have it. You want this statue, you can have it. Anything you see, if you want it, you can have it. You want my life? I will give you my life." And it kind of takes Anakin by surprise, but he's like confused, and then he gets, "I'm a Sith Lord. I'm the one you all have been looking for. I was serious. If you want my life, take it. I can feel your anger. It makes you stronger. Take it." And they don't really get into it.
This is a catch-22, because if he had struck down Palpatine, he'd have fallen anyways.
But he would have saved the Republic.
For what? For him to gain control?
Well,
I guarantee it.
No, but if he, at this point, if he would have truly believed that he was the one, the chosen one, he would have struck down Palpatine and believed that everything within the Force would have worked itself out. But instead, he was so attached and tied up to Padme and not wanting to lose her that he goes along with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, on top of that, Palpatine was like another father figure. He was the
dark angel to
the dark father to the light father of Obi-Wan.
Yep. So there's just so much, and we're talking. I would say we're pretty high on the film right now, but there's one in this scene, or around this scene. There's one thing I can't stand, and that's the voice that they use for when the Force is essentially being channeled through Palpatine. It's I don't even know how to describe it. It's awkward and weird.
See, I don't mind it.
I don't.
For me, I felt it was more like he's finally shed his mask and now he's just kind of reveling in the fact that I can finally be who I am.
Like when I hear when he says, "Do it," that's Sidious. But when he's like, "Good, good," I'm like, "Whoa, ease off, dude."
I liked it because it took me back to Palpatine in Episode 6.
And for me, that's the good and the do it, not the
The
Lord.
Force is strong.
Yeah, that just it felt like it was.
Hey, to each their own. I actually enjoyed that sequence. I didn't like the. My issue is I can't believe for 1 second that Anakin bought into the BS, as it were, of oh yeah, the Jedi are trying to overthrow the Republic.
Yeah.
I don't think he bought into it other than to simply just placate Palpatine. His only real goal is he needed Palpatine alive because he believed he could save his wife.
I think at that point he wasn't fully turned. He was close. But he felt that the only way he was going to get this power was to go and follow Palpatine and do as he says and just go along with it. Mm-hmm. So he's like, okay, yeah, they're evil. I'll go kill them. All of them? Okay. And then like if you watch it, if I remember right. No, I was thinking that was after. Wrong scene. I was thinking when after just before he kills the younglings that he was crying, but that's later. That's later. But the fact that he's like, okay, well, we got to kill the younglings. All right, well, you didn't have to. Not really.
Well, I brought that up. The fact is you could have literally the young ones, the ones that fought. Yeah, you're gonna have to kill them.
But the ones that were
hiding in that room, you could have literally captured and used as your first batch of Inquisitors for hunting Jedi later on. I mean, you take a young child like that, easily corruptible by the Sith. So,
but I can understand why Palpatine wanted them all dead. He wanted a clean
clean slate. Nobody knows history of the Jedi. Nobody knows any of the politics or the dogma or any of that stuff. He wants them gone.
Yep.
And for some reason, he has just the most utter hatred for the Jedi, which they never really even explain, even in the non-canon book they wrote about him.
No, and that you're led to assume that that's just because he's a Sith in the long millennia of the Sith dynasty, from Darth Bane forward.
I don't even think that would explain it. You gotta have a personal hatred for the Jedi, not simply I want to be a Sith, therefore I hate the Jedi. For him, he takes on Yoda, and I've been waiting a long time for this, and just the amount of hatred he's got for the Jedi and Order.
Well, how old is he at this point? How long has he been working?
How do we know?
Well, that's the thinking. I was like, how long has he been working in the Senate next to these Jedi as a Sith, going? Mm-hmm. These guys are stupid.
Well, there's that, but I mean, we might never know. Though I gotta say, there's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, though, is the opera house.
Yeah, I enjoy that. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Well, there's that. It's the whole dynamic of the conversation, and just even the setting of it. You know, it's a private moment between him and Palpatine.
Mon Cal opera, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it's just like I love watching that scene because it's probably the closest moment at this point that you come to of Palpatine's pretty much just laying it out there. This isn't a story that Jedi can tell you. And yet he knows it.
And Anakin never goes, well, how did you learn this story?
Yeah, it's just he's like flaunting it at this point. Mm-hmm. He's also flaunting his power. I mean, he basically just orders everyone out of the room. They get up and they get the hell out.
I believe it was Masamita and Sly Moore there.
Mm-hmm. And the guards.
Yeah, which I was starting to think about it now as we were talking about it. I made mention that Sly Moore was basically controlling minds. I wonder if they would have found out that he was Sidious earlier, because they originally thought that it was a Sith Lord in his midst controlling him. If he would have essentially thrown Sly Moore under the bus, you're Force sensitive. You're the Sith.
I don't even think they knew.
Probably not, but I'm just wondering if that was one of his contingencies, because he had contingencies on contingencies on contingencies.
Mm-hmm. Thing is, he had it. I mean, episode 2 is when he knew he had them dead to rights. Honestly,
as soon as they made the clone army.
No. As soon as Yoda basically said we can't see the future.
I'll give you
Because
that.
the thing is they talk a lot about the fact that the Jedi's powers are weakening because the power of the dark side is growing. Palpatine knows this. Palpatine, pretty much at this point, I think he was just in his endgame. I'm just going to run on through it. I got nothing to worry about. I could reveal myself a week ago and they still couldn't have done anything. He
I
controlled the whole Senate.
Yes, but I don't think. I think he needed.
He needed.
The galaxy wasn't in a state where he could fully pull control yet.
Yeah.
He needed the war for everyone to turn on the Jedi
Mm-hmm.
and droids.
Mm-hmm. So.
Clones too, a little bit. Because essentially, right after the war, they started phasing out clone troopers for stormtroopers.
Well, that's because the Kaminoans. The Kamino Rebellion. The Kaminoans bred a group of clones and attempted to secede from the Empire control. So they had to go in, they pretty much destroyed the cloning labs, and basically at that point didn't trust anyone to clone them anymore because the Emperor needed them under his control.
Well, I don't remember that. But
It might be
It's
non-canon now, but it was there.
Probably, but so let's actually. I want to talk a little bit. We mentioned Grievous. We mentioned Obi-Wan. I want to talk about the Battle of Utapau. It's. What would you say about the style of the battle, the duel between Grievous and Obi-Wan?
Cinematically flashy.
I wanted more out of it. I read.
Well-
I can't remember if I read the novel first or watched the movie.
Well,
I don't think I did.
it
I
was
read the
kinda-
novel later. After reading the novel, the novel just explains it a little bit better. When they decide that Obi-Wan's going to track down Grievous instead of Anakin, like Palpatine wanted, another step in his plan to get Anakin to his side. Windu tells him that he is master of lightsaber form 4.
Shicho.
No, 4 is the jumpy one. Maybe 3. It's the defensive stance, and
No, Obi-Wan is the best
and
lightsaber when it comes to defensive
the
forms.
line was, he said, "Thank you for considering me a master," and Windu basically said, "No, not a master, the master." Basically comes out and says, "You're the best the Order's ever had at this style. You're the only one that can handle him," because he comes out with 4 lightsabers, and his augmentations from his robotic body and the cybernetic enhancements on his brain, with the training from Dooku, he moves faster than the eye can see. And I understand that you can't put that cinematically because you wouldn't see anything.
No, it's just
But Obi-Wan's
not
the
even-
only one that could have brought him down.
It's just still a case of they could have not killed Dooku off at the beginning of the film, not put Grievous in, and had Dooku on Utapau facing off with Obi-Wan for the final showdown.
Well, yes.
It just I feel like they threw Grievous in much as they did with, and I'm not complaining about Darth Maul, but let's give him a staff saber. Nobody's seen that before, and now it's, well, we've seen 2 lightsabers. Let's go with 4 now. And it's just like, I feel that was more for getting people to go.
I don't think you could have Obi-Wan and Dooku one-on-one at that point because of how handedly Obi-Wan got his butt
Well, I
handed
think
to him.
we kind of secured the fact that Obi-Wan, I don't think, was quite all that powerful in the Force. I think he was much more of a mind kind of person, and a lightsaber.
Yeah.
You know, he was a wise person and smart, but I don't think he had the kind level of Force power that others had,
Well,
because
I
he
know-
pretty much got his butt kicked by Force powers quite regularly.
Maul almost threw him down a cliff with a Force push. But I remember in the Legends continuity, he almost wasn't a Jedi because he wasn't able to do something with the Force, and it took Qui-Gon saying, "I'll train him.
I
He'll
think
be
it was
fine."
like telekinesis.
So it all ties together. I just don't know how much of that's still canon.
Mm-hmm. But No, I wasn't really a big fan of that battle outside of the very end with, I lost my lightsaber, so I'm going to shoot him with a blaster, and that's so uncivilized.
Yeah, it's
He's,
just the throwback to Episode 4.
it is. It also kind of shows that, I don't know how to describe him, but Obi-Wan is kind of, I don't know, high society in some ways. Droids are servants. A blaster's an uncivilized weapon, whereas a sword is nice and clean, you know. I mean,
He does remind you of aristocracy.
yeah,
Or at least the older
he
notion
reminds me of like a noble general kind of deal. Oh, he's got no problem getting down and dirty in the trenches with the troops, but in the end, he's going to be sitting in fine dining kind of
Right.
deal. Well, he's got a droid
negotiate.
serving him.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So that actually is what led directly into Order 66. Him killing Grievous. We didn't talk. We mentioned it very briefly, but it's revealed within the Clone Wars animated series that the clones have 150 contingencies. Only a handful are shown that are still canon. This one, Order 66, basically means the Jedi are, at least to the clones, the Jedis are in open rebellion. They're trying to secure they all must die.
Mm-hmm.
So Captain Cody, who's worked with Obi-Wan for 3 years, Cody considers him a really close friend.
They're battle buddies.
Shoots him without a second thought.
It's training.
Coyote Mundi is surprised by his legion on Megiddo.
Yeah, Megiddo.
We see Felucia.
We see
Cato Nemodia. That's
Nemodia,
where
the pilot goes down.
Yeah, what was,
the Vorn.
I can't think of his name right now.
I can't think of his
but
name.
he actually is the one that found Ahsoka Tano as an infant. Plo Koon. I knew I'd pull it eventually.
That whole sequence really, truly, though, just showed how blinded the Jedi had become in the simple sense of the Force didn't warn them. They had no idea.
There was one on a speeder, and she didn't even realize her troopers that were running escort dropped back.
It was
the only one that noticed it
mm-hmm.
was Yoda, and I think that's only because he sensed all of the Jedi dying.
Oh yeah, he sensed the change in power
before.
I mean, Yoda was tapped in, as you know, but yeah, it saved his life because that was his warning. But in the end, it's like if everyone even the Sith, the Jedi, whoever, they all talk about the will of the Force. The reality is if the will of the Force is the Jedi have to be extinguished, the Force ain't.
Yep.
They had no knowledge of it. And if the will of the Force is Yoda has to live and Obi-Wan's got to survive to raise the kids.
Well, I think the will of the Force is... They talked about balance. And I think we're going to see this more in The Rise of the Skywalkers, about balance. It seems like the sequel trilogy has been all about balancing the Force. So we'll talk about that probably more with The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. But right now you have the light side way up here and the dark side way down here, because you have at least hundreds of Jedi and 2.
And now it's
Sith.
Basically evened out to be
so
2
the
Sith.
Force says, okay, most of these Jedi have to die, so Order 66 brings it down. And then you see the dark side start to rise a little bit more, and then we get our what happens in 6, and then they're level again.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like every year, every generation, Anakin is meant to balance the Force from a light side perspective to dark side, bringing them equal. In that aspect, fulfilled the prophecy. Luke did the same thing, essentially, through Vader. Leveled it back out. And we'll probably see the same with either Ben or Rey, but that's later. That's down the road.
My thing is in theaters, oh yeah, I had tears, during that sequence. You got the music was perfect.
Yep.
The sequencing of it was awesome. But, and I know a lot of Star Trek people or Star Trek, yeah, right, Star Wars.
You do know George Takei voiced a guy in Clone Wars, so kind of relevant, kind of.
So,
Separatist
for
general.
me, it's as I've gotten older and read so much and, watched Star Wars, read Star Wars. My thing is personally, I feel the Jedi brought it on themselves in the end, and it was time for a basically, as I described it to him in an earlier discussion, off camera. You have to burn down the Force sometime in order to stimulate new growth.
Well,
the Jedi were blind by their position. I mean, they were basically nobility who had no idea what was going on anymore.
And they were too involved in the politics of the galaxy instead of listening to the Force.
Yep. No, I mean,
And it brought down their
we
downfall.
mentioned it in the last video. You've got the woman who keeps the Jedi archives who literally believes that everything in the galaxy, all knowledge, should be in there. And if it's not there, then it's not there.
Yep.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, period. And it's like, you guys have been sitting on your high throne for so long that you pretty much just destroyed your own foundations and you're done for. Because, we're keepers of the peace, but we're not soldiers. Well, you guys became soldiers. The thing is the Jedi Order's whole mission is you're supposed to protect the galaxy, but you're not willing to fight half the time. No, we're going to sit back and talk. We're not going to fight.
As soon as they move their headquarters, their main temple, their grand temple, from, well, I don't know where all they were, but I know the first non-canonical.
I thought that was canonical.
I'm just going from, we're going to say Ahch-To, because that's the first Jedi temple, right? So there have been other places in Coruscant. As soon as they moved their main headquarters to Coruscant and started listening more to galactic politics instead of the will of the Force, started their downfall.
And then you even see it, Episode 1. You got offhand, Obi-Wan goes on about pathetic life form. You got his,
he did that twice.
One
about Anakin.
Doesn't particularly care for droids, and Anakin kind of calls him on it in the elevator about no loose wire jokes. The thing is, Obi-Wan makes it clear he's not. He doesn't think highly of certain lower orders.
Look at how quickly he went through Astromechs. He went through at least 2 in this. Like, his R4 unit gets the buzz droid, rip his head off, and when R2 beats a buzz droid on his own or does anything else well, he just like, cool, thanks. He doesn't. And when you have Anakin, like, thanks, buddy.
They held themselves above all the people they were supposed to protect.
Yep.
It may not have been conscious, but I mean, when you sit in high towers with basically, I wouldn't necessarily say wealth or materialistic wealth, but the reality is they lived in comfort.
They did, and since the infancy, because they're picked up.
You're provided for. I mean, Anakin went from
a slave,
being a slave. I mean, it seemed like he had it fairly decent with Watto.
Watto wasn't a
bad
slave. But
the point is, he's a slave. They're living on dried fruits and fruits from a market. They live in a sandy house. He brings up a point in Episode 2. Sand gets into everything. It's coarse. It's gritty. It's he's
just tired. Yep.
He comes from that environment and then gets introduced into an environment in which everything's provided for him.
Yep.
He's probably one of the few Jedi at this point who know what it's like out in the real world. Because they say it. If he'd been born in the Republic, we'd have found him much earlier. I mean, so you're talking 2 years old, maybe 1 year old.
Yep.
They don't know what lifestyle they came from.
They're not even allowed to
know their family.
The only one that eventually
was it Mace Windu?
No, not Mace. It was Dooku. It's what turned him out from. He finds out he's from Sereno. I don't remember how he found out. He was
nobility, wasn't he?
He's a count. Yep, and that's why he's Count Dooku. But he basically was born from the ruling family. He meets his sister, and they start talking back and forth, and that's how he decided to. It's one of the reasons that he left the Jedi Order.
One of the reasons.
He's actually got a new canon book out, I think, called Dooku or so many novels, I don't keep up with them. So Dooku's dead, Grievous is dead, Order 66 has happened. This leads to mass subjugation throughout the universe. We see it
pretty much
right
overnight.
away because
The Wookiees.
The Wookiees, yep.
The Utapauans, because they're marching them away.
I didn't notice that.
Oh yeah, they got troops surrounding small groups, and they're walking them down. Well, you got Cody dressing down the troops, going, "Where's the body? I want Obi-Wan's body."
Okay,
You know?
I remember the scene.
They're
I don't
marching
remember
them.
looking
They're
in the
marching
back.
them down the streets, basically in groups. And I mean, I think it's more on the planets where they killed Jedi. I think they may have it more of a martial law. I don't know about immediate subjugation. Like the Wookiees, they didn't really subjugate them until they needed them for the Death Star project.
Oh, that would make sense to martial law where they killed
Martial
Jedi
law,
because
we need to find the Jedi. We don't want you helping them, and we want you
Okay.
telling us what you see, and we will let you
and that
go.
makes sense specifically on those two planets because they didn't find the bodies of the Jedi. Makes sense. Okay.
I mean, the reality is Palpatine wanted the Jedi gone because he didn't want immediate civil war. You can't really go from one war to, okay, now the clone troops have turned on every population center that they're in, because you're going to end up having a civil war immediately.
Well, that's one of the reasons why he didn't immediately disband the Senate. And
But-
Obi-Wan points that out right away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he needs them. They got to keep control and everything else. Not to mention, they make references, if you don't really pay attention. The Republic Army and military in general is so stretched thin that they were on the tipping point. The only reason they won is because with Dooku gone and Grievous gone, the Separatists didn't have anything left in them.
They didn't have any
They ran out of power.
military leaders. They had a core council, and then they had a Senate, which they don't mention in the movies. They mention it in the Clone Wars series.
But then on top of that, it's also, they've pretty much just been playing along with what Sidious
Dooku.
wanted.
Yep, because they were following Dooku almost
And
blindly.
Sidious promises them peace, at which point they figure, okay, we'll shut everything down as soon as we're told to.
Yep. You mentioned being left in peace. That leads to Anakin Vader's mission to Mustafar. He is there to kill the Separatists. That's what he was sent to do. And it was Newt Gunray who says, but Lord Sidious said we
promised us peace.
Promised us peace. In the novel, it's probably my favorite part in the novel, because he said, his line is different. He says, but Lord Sidious said we'd be left in peace. And Anakin's reply was, no, the transmission was garbled. He said you'd be left in pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then proceeds to cut them apart.
Yeah. I have to say that sequence from there on in the movie, any issues I have with Hayden Christensen at that point, he redeems himself, because he wasn't very good, in my opinion, as Anakin Skywalker. Acting wise,
He did better in this film,
He
but
did
that's
better in
that's
3.
back to writing, and which
But
I'm not going
he
to destroy in this
was utterly convincing and just amazing as Vader. I mean, the amount of hatred he's able to show, the amount of anger, the amount of sadness, the amount of this. I mean,
After he kills the Separatist, he's crying. Like, he knows he's...
Well,
I think he even had Sith eyes at that point.
He did, but there was a scene, and this is the first time I've ever really paid close attention. He's cutting them down in the main control room. And as he's spinning, you just see the look on his face is a mixture of just almost like agony and hate. Like, he hates what he's doing right now, but he also hates them. And at the same time, he knows they have to die. And I mean, just the amount of confliction. I mean, it's a split second. He literally spins, and you see his hood start to come back from...
And that's kind of where that tear comes from, because he knows he hated them so much, but he knows what he just did was wrong.
No, it's the utter conflict. I mean, Palpatine picked the perfect person.
Yep.
He's willing to go literally to any lengths to achieve his goals, but at the same time, he's still got morals inside. And that's why, later down the road, everyone goes, he's still got good in him. It's
Yep,
because he knows everything he does is wrong. But after episode 3,
he doesn't care.
he doesn't have anything to live for other
Yep.
than to achieve his goal, which is he wants order and peace across the galaxy. And to do that, he's willing to do anything Palpatine tells him to.
There's also an allusion within the latest run of the Darth Vader comic where he is also trying to bring Padme back from the dead. Or at least...
Oh, God, they just had to go there, didn't they?
At
They already
least
brought
that's
them all
what
back.
at least
Stop bringing people back from the dead.
That seems to be
It's the
my
equi-
recollection of it.
It's the equivalent of other comic books. You got Batman dies. Oh, now he's back from the dead. Oh, Superman dies. Oh, he's back from the dead. Stop bringing people back. Like,
Death needs...
like now,
Death-
this is a
Death
later
needs,
film, like Solo, but even Clone Wars the show, Rebels. And I heard about this comic years ago. You told me about it. Darth Maul was awesome in episode 1. He's probably one of my favorite Sith. But the gall that the writer of that comic, and this is partly, I think,
George came back from in the
we're gonna bring him
cartoon.
back to life and give him robot legs from the waist down. Why?
He shows up in the Clone Wars cartoon with robotic spider legs.
Yeah, but
and he's
but
mad.
But the
He's
original
crazy.
time that happened was Vader versus Darth Maul comic.
Oh yeah, they did do a comic like that.
And that's where the idea came from. And
Yep.
that's the problem with, okay, yes, I agree with Kathleen Kennedy when she said there were a lot of continuation errors in the old EU, which, I mean, once she really got her hands involved in that, she fixed that back in the day. Everyone had to go through her to make it work.
Well, she
on an
created.
author standpoint.
They did a
But
story
the point
council.
was, is you had Timothy's on, his books were non-canon pretty much. And then you had the comic book people, they're coming up with things. So then you have this one guy go, I really like Darth Maul, and it'd be awesome if he fought Darth Vader. So I'm going to bring him back, and the story's going to be that they got his body and stuck legs on him and then brought him back to life. I'm going to leave the dead dead. It's that simple. Don't bring back dead people, because now at this point I've been teased and, I want to see what they're going to do. But we'll discuss that in the next one.
Actually, that is the next one.
Next one.
So
it's just, okay,
prepare yourself for a real rant next time, I guess.
Back on
So
track.
okay, let's. Mustafar is probably one of the better lightsaber fights, Obi-Wan and Anakin, or do you want to save that until after we talk about the duel in the Senate?
See, I was just going to combine the two.
Okay. Well, they jump back and forth.
No, actually, I'm not going to combine the two, because personally, I'm not that big a fan of the battle between Yoda and Palpatine.
How come?
I think it was lacking. They cut it. It was the typical, I'm going to jump around, swing my saber a little bit, then we're going to test our force powers, and I'm going to get my butt kicked.
He's 2 feet tall.
It's just, the thing
He's
was,
gotta
it's
jump.
like they just kind of threw that in there.
Okay.
Like, I don't feel there was the necessary effort put into the
I
whole
don't
sequence.
think they needed a lightsaber battle. I think that should have been a pure force battle.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily lightning, but because, well, Yoda just uses like force repulsion or however it is, but he doesn't generate his own lightning. But I get the idea of wanting a lightsaber battle there, because there's only so much you can do with force powers without a lightsaber. And I kind of checked out, like, I like the battle at the very beginning when they're in his office, because it's witty and it's funny, and he calls him out right away, says Lord Sidious, and I think that kind of took him for a minute, because I don't think he realized that they knew what his Sith name was.
Yeah, because he just was like, Master Yoda.
I'm gonna run away. Nah, no you're not. And he
It's-
just right away knocks out those 2 guards.
My thing with it is I understand the focus of the whole thing. It's just, I feel like if you're going to put the effort in to have a battle between Yoda and Palpatine, you need to make it epic, not simply, okay, we're going to cut to this scene where some of these daises are going to get thrown, so you see there's some carnage in the background. And then Yoda just kind of takes all of it until You don't see Yoda doing much during that. He's more running from these things flying
and
at him.
he's trying
then
to
at
get
one point
up
he
to-
stops and, okay, I'm going to catch this and throw it at Palpatine. He's going to, of course, jump out of the way. And then it's, oh, Palpatine's Force Lightning, and boom, we're done. Okay. I mean, it's just, I didn't like Yoda in the whole sequence.
You don't like the way Yoda battles with a lightsaber to begin
Oh
with.
no, I did too. I think they kind of.
Well, I don't like the fact that it happened within the Senate, but at the same time, there is a story being told here because it is a battle for the Senate. Battle for the Senate in the Senate.
Mm-hmm. It's just.
And, okay, I've been thinking about this for years, and I want your opinion on it. Do you think this battle between Yoda and Palpatine would have went differently if Obi-Wan didn't immediately go to try to find Anakin? If it was Yoda and Kenobi against Sidious, would it have went differently?
No.
Even though he is the master of defensive lightsaber technique.
He doesn't have the power to stand up to Sidious. I think he'd have just gotten in Yoda's way. I don't think to be honest, I don't think there was anyone who could really match Palpatine at this point. He was at the height of his powers.
I think Windu could have beat him.
Well, Windu could have, I think, yes. He was young. He understood the difference between fighting with anger and hate versus fighting with a purpose.
And his lightsaber style turns the dark side back on itself.
The biggest difference I always felt was that Obi-Wan should not have been the one to go after Anakin.
Okay.
I believe if it had been reversed, if Yoda had gone, Yoda would have been able to do it. The problem that came, and this is cutting ahead of the other part of half of this discussion. Obi-Wan does not have the heart to be able to finish. He knows he has to stop Vader, but in the end, he can't do it. He is blinded by his feelings for Anakin.
Which is why he begs to
go after the Emperor.
But thinking about it, you're right, because we mentioned earlier that Obi-Wan isn't as adept with the Force to use it offensively or defensively as Yoda. So he wouldn't have. You're right. He wouldn't have stood a chance.
He might have been able to divide Palpatine's attention, but to be honest...
And that was my thought.
To be honest, I just don't see it happening because, I mean, in the book, they don't do it in the movie. In the book, Yoda basically knew that he lost before he walked in.
Yeah.
And the main reason being is just... I think part of it's just his own sense of failure. On top of that, the fact that the dark side reigned ascendant. His powers were weak at that point.
Well, he was almost 900. All right, so let's...
A younger Yoda could have probably taken him on.
Well, Yoda didn't enter, if they keep this canon, Yoda didn't enter the Jedi Order until he was about 100.
Well, yeah, but when you live to be 900, that's like 10.
Yeah. So... let's move on to the final lightsaber battle of the film, at least the one that we're going to talk about. Anakin, Obi-Wan on Mustafar. It was emotional.
I think it was probably the best lightsaber battle of the original 6 films.
What? Why?
Why? What do you think beats out?
I think the emotional connection between Vader and Luke on the Death Star 2.
I'm thinking more in terms of style.
If we're doing choreographed,
okay, I'm gonna say in terms of intensity and just this is just a brawl. We're beating the living crap out of each other. It's a long drawn out. I mean, it's the best sequenced one. Now, I will give you this. The one between Vader and Luke in Episode 6 is probably the best overall lightsaber battle because of the character development, the connections within it, and the story it tells during that battle. So, yes.
I go back and forth between that one and their battle in Empire. But we'll get to that later. So, from a modern duel perspective, you're going with
Yeah.
this one. Okay. Okay.
Simply because you literally have Obi-Wan has to stop him, and Anakin at this point is just so consumed by hate and anger. He struck down Padme on accident,
He choked her out.
but he also blames her because he thinks she's siding with Obi-Wan. I mean, he's at the height of his pretty much. I wouldn't say the height of his power overall, but he's at the height probably of his anger and hatred at this point in his life.
At this point, I would say he's at a high point because he feels like the woman he loves betrayed him, and his
mentor's been
father
holding him
figure
back.
has come here to kill him.
And it's literally, I mean, what, Battle of Brothers, basically. They just are literally going all out. I mean, there's one sequence that in theaters, I thought was awesome. Because they're no lightsaber. They're beating the crap out of each other and jump kicking.
Oh, yeah, where they're kicking each other on that table. And the battle starts with that dialogue exchange. Your new empire, and he goes, "You're either with me or against me," and that's where Obi-Wan realizes there's nothing I can do. I have to stop him. Only Siths deal in absolutes.
Yep.
And you're right. At the end of that battle, he can't do it.
That's the problem. I mean, he's literally letting him burn.
He could have just
couldn't even walk down there and just finish him.
Yep.
And that is probably one of the biggest mistakes
of Obi-Wan's life.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the end, yeah, everything kind of worked out to some extent. I mean, yeah, it works out in episode 6, but it took 25, 30. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just at the same note, I mean, what might have happened had he struck him down? Palpatine might have found somebody else.
He would have needed someone else, but who knows if it had been a full... It would have probably been one of the Inquisitors.
But I mean, it's like, at that point, would Obi-Wan and Yoda's plan really have worked in the end? I mean,
Luke would have had no inspiration, no connection.
No way of dealing with him.
Yep. But he might have trained longer, too. It would have changed the landscape of the universe. There's one sequence there. It's right after the kicking table sequence. Obi-Wan is on his back. I think it's Obi-Wan on his back, and they come forward and they cross their sabers in a cross, and
then they hit each other with force power.
Well, in the novel, Obi-Wan can't move, so he uses the Force to tinker with Anakin's robotic arm to start kind of pulling at his mechanism. So he starts getting loose, but this gives Anakin the idea, and he does it to Obi-Wan's bones. So it goes more in depth with the Force powers. There's one thing that I could have done
you can't show a lot of Force powers in the film.
True. And there's one sequence within the battle I could have done without. And that's where they're standing like that far apart and just swinging their lightsabers in a circle. Like, what are you guys doing?
Well, that whole sequence...
And then when they're standing there trying to force push each other?
That whole sequence to me with them literally swinging swords is they have trained together their entire life. They know each other's moves to the point at which they literally, at that point, were trying to counter and attack each other and were just basically just... That's how I always felt about it. Like, we're sitting here, we're dueling, now I'm expecting you over here because I know your move, you're expecting over here. And they just literally go around each other because they've literally trained for
Anakin's
12 years together
at this point.
14 years together.
13, 14, yeah.
They've dueled together, they know each other's moves. I mean, they're probably the most well-matched opponents. The downside being, like we discussed earlier,
defensive stance against the strong stance, yeah.
Well, no, I was going to say
the form
simple.
Factors is what I was
overall,
thinking.
Obi-Wan may have won the battle, but he couldn't finish it.
That's fair. But
if Yoda had been there, probably it would have. Yoda wouldn't have held back. He'd have killed him.
Yoda would have probably just picked him up and threw him in the lava and been done with it. Because, like Obi-Wan said in 2, if you practice your saber techniques as much as you practice your wit, you'd be on par with Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
So, You're right. And in reality, Anakin should thank Dooku for his life because he's overconfident. He tries to jump over Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's like, "Hey, I did this before. I know what's going on." Upper swing, cuts off 2 legs and an arm. The only thing he doesn't cut off is the robotic arm,
yeah.
which I'm guessing has cortosis in it.
No, he didn't hit him in that arm.
He missed it completely?
He swung around and basically caught the legs. He never hit that arm. I mean, it was just the angle of the attack as he jumped over. There's no way, unless you cut straight through Anakin, there would have been no way to hit that arm.
I thought he made like a double turn where he caught the arms and he caught the legs.
No. I think he like came up from underneath the legs and then caught the one arm.
Mm. Well, if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have survived because he crawled up the.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Obi-Wan assumed he was dead and left, which he shouldn't have. He should have just euthanized him, just been done with it, put him out of his misery, and walk off. But Obi-Wan couldn't do it, so he just picks up his lightsaber and he leaves. But he takes Padme to
Polis Massa.
Yep, to give birth to what they think is one baby. Turns out to be twins, Luke and Leia.
And Padme just gives up. But begs Obi-Wan to understand that there's still good in Anakin. Anakin's still there.
What gets me is she gives up on life because of a heartache, but now she's got 2 children that she doesn't want to fight for.
Yeah, everybody hates that part of the whole storyline. She's lost the will to live, and it's like, well, it's kind of selfish right there. You got 2 kids now, but because your husband has gone crazy, you just said the heck with it.
Yep.
But to be honest, had she survived, she'd have probably been hunted to the ends of the galaxy.
Oh, absolutely. And they separate the twins. The Leia going with Bail Organa, and Luke going to Tatooine with Obi-Wan. And then they bury
her with a pillow stuffed under her.
Yep. And the Japor snippet that Anakin carved for her in Episode 1. And
the galaxy believes she and her child are now dead.
Yep. And what... Oh, we'll talk about that later. I don't want to get into that right now. So, as you can see, we could probably go on and on, but there are moments that are coming up here that are more relevant in later movies. This, for me, is the best of the prequels, by far.
Mm-hmm. Having watched again, yeah. There was a period I watched it a little too often, and it just got to me.
Yep.
Couldn't do it anymore, but it's been probably, I don't know, 2 years since I've watched it the last time. Yeah, it picked up this time, but I think part of that's simply because of the fact that we're watching these in order.
Yep. So with that said, what have you thought of the prequel trilogy? Go ahead and leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think, and if you agree with us or even disagree and want to see our thoughts on later Star Wars movies, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, have a great night.